We hear it all the time, right? These stories about missile defense systems with near-perfect success rates. But what if they're hiding a much more dangerous truth? Today, we're going to deconstruct the myth of the perfect shield. You know the headlines I'm talking about, like that incredible 90% interception rate that's so often claimed for Israel's Iron Dome system. And if that wasn't enough, how about this one? A staggering 96% success rate. That's what was reported for South Korea's Cheongung-II system during its first real test in the Middle East. So you hear numbers like that and you think, wow, that's an impenetrable shield. But do those numbers really tell the whole story? Because when you start digging into the engineering and you look at the brutal reality of the battlefield, a very different picture starts to emerge. Okay, so let's dive right into this. To really get our heads around the myth of the perfect shield, we've got to peel back the layers. And the first layer, it's all about the clever math that makes these incredible claims even possible in the first place. All right, so here's the absolute key to understanding all of this. It's the difference between what we, the public, hear, the interception rate, and what the engineers actually work with. That's a little thing called single-shot kill probability, or SSKP for short. Think of it this way. The interception rate, that's like the final score of the game you see on the news. But the SSKP, that's the nitty-gritty. It's like a batter's chance of getting a hit in a single at-bat. It is the raw, fundamental probability that one interceptor is going to take out one target. That's it. Okay, don't worry, I'm not going to make you do calculus here. But what this formula really shows is the secret sauce. See, defense systems aren't banking on one single perfect movie-style shot. Nope. They're way smarter than that. They use the laws of probability to stack the deck in their favor, firing multiple interceptors at the same target. And that's how you get what's called the cumulative kill probability. So how does that actually work in practice? Let's break it down. Imagine you have an interceptor, and it's got a 70% chance of hitting its target. I mean, that's pretty good, right? A solid B-. But it's not perfect. Well, if you fire two of them at the same incoming missile, the chance of them both failing is suddenly tiny, just 9%. And just like that, boom, your system's overall success rate skyrockets to that headline-grabbing 91%. But remember the catch. You got there by firing two very, very expensive missiles at just one single threat. And this whole numbers game, it brings us to another even more critical problem. It's something that MIT professor Theodor Postal has been talking about for years. He basically argues that these official rates are wildly exaggerated, and the true kill probability, well, it could be as low as 5%. And you're probably asking, how on earth is that possible? Well, it all comes down to the huge difference between a hit and a kill. Right, so just because you hit something doesn't mean you've actually stopped it. A lot of these systems, they work like giant shotgun shells in the sky. They get close to the target and then, kaboom, they explode, spraying it with shrapnel. Now, that might tear up the missile's body for sure, but the warhead, that's the part that goes boom. It's usually hardened and it can just keep right on going to its target and detonate. For the people on the ground, that's a total failure, even if the scoreboard back at HQ marks it down as a successful hit. Okay, so enough with the theory and the math. Let's get real. Let's go to the battlefield, where the stakes are life and death, and where your enemies are constantly learning, adapting, and trying to find new ways to beat you. So let's meet the players. Here we have three of the top systems in the world today. You've got the American Patriot, kind of the old guard, the gold standard for decades. Then there's the South Korean Cheongung-II, a real rising star on the scene. And, of course, the famous Iron Dome from Israel. Now, look closely at the details here. How they kill, how they see the world with their radar, and, this is a big one, how much each shot costs. Because trust me, these details become absolutely critical when the shooting starts. The war in Ukraine. Wow. It has been a brutal, real-world stress test for this tech. And the famous Patriot system? After some big wins early on, its effectiveness started to just plummet. And you have to ask why. Well, Russia adapted. They started doing things like lofted trajectories, basically yeeting missiles way up high so they come screaming down almost vertically at insane speeds. Plus, they use sophisticated decoys to fool the radar. And the result? The Patriot success rate against these advanced threats dropped to as low as 15%. Now, flip that coin. Look at the Cheongung-II in the UAE. It faced this incredibly complex, layered attack from Iran, and it aced the test. A near-perfect 96% success rate. And a huge reason why was its 360-degree radar. It has no blind spots, unlike the Patriot, which can only look in one direction at a time. But here's the thing.
even if you have a system that hits 96% of the time. Even the most advanced systems on the planet are fighting two invisible enemies. Enemies that you almost never hear about on the news. And those enemies are the brutal logic of economics and the cold, unbending laws of physics.
So let's start with the money. Every single time an interceptor is fired, it's a financial transaction. And right now, the defender is getting absolutely crushed in that transaction. It's a crippling problem that strategists call the cost-exchange ratio. I mean, look at this chart. It lays out the absurdity of the situation perfectly. An attacker can build a drone, like a Shahid, for maybe $20,000. To stop it, the defender has to fire a Patriot missile that costs $4 million. Let that sink in. You're using a missile that costs as much as a Lamborghini to take out a drone that costs as much as a used Honda Civic. An attacker can literally bankrupt you long before you ever shoot down all their weapons.
And it's not just about the money. The very eyes of these systems, their incredibly advanced radars, they're vulnerable too. Vulnerable to the real world. In a place like Korea, which is super mountainous, the terrain itself creates huge blind spots where low-flying missiles or drones can just hide. Or what about weather? Heavy rain, thick fog, they can choke a high-frequency radar, cutting its range dramatically. And that's before we even talk about an enemy who is actively trying to blind you with electronic warfare, jamming your signals and turning your multi-billion-dollar shield into a big, dumb wall of useless metal.
So you add all of this up, the tricky math, the economics, the physics, and it all leads to the ultimate, almost impossible dilemma for any commander, especially when their job is to protect a city packed with millions of people.
This is the tragic choice that no commander ever wants to make. Because even if you are 100% successful, an interception isn't some clean video game explosion. It's a violent, chaotic event. You're talking about thousands of pieces of burning metal, toxic fuel, and razor-sharp shrapnel raining down over a huge area. So when you're protecting a city, what are you really choosing between? The certainty of a warhead hitting its intended target, or the random, terrifying lottery of that debris falling on homes, schools, and killing innocent civilians?
And believe me, this isn't just a what-if scenario. This happened. In 2022, North Korean drones flew right over the heart of Seoul. The South Korean military had them dead to rights. They had fighter jets in the air, attack helicopters ready to go. But the commanders, they had to make the call to hold their fire. The risk of shooting down even a small drone and having the wreckage fall on millions of people, it was just too high. It proved that the geography of a modern city can completely paralyze even the most advanced multi-billion-dollar air defense network. And this challenge, it just gets magnified by 1,000 when you look at systems like South Korea's new Lamded, their Korean Iron Dome. See, Israel's Iron Dome has to deal with maybe dozens, sometimes hundreds of rockets. But the Lamded, it has to be ready to stop a North Korean artillery barrage of thousands of shells in the first hour of a war. The sheer volume, it threatens to just completely swamp any number of interceptors you could possibly have. So all of this, it really brings us to a tough but unavoidable conclusion. The idea that we can build a single, perfect, leak-proof shield to cover a whole country, at least right now, it's a fantasy, both technologically and, just as importantly, economically. So if that's the case, what's the answer? Where do we go from here? Well, it's not about building a bigger, better shield. The future is about creating a smarter, more layered, and more affordable defense ecosystem. We're talking about game changers like low-cost killers. Think lasers, where each shot costs a few dollars, not a few million. We're talking about dominating the electronic battlefield, so-called soft kills that disable threats before they even get off the ground. It means linking every sensor we have, from satellites in space to soldiers on the ground, into one seamless, AI-driven network. And most of all, it means finally understanding that winning the cost exchange war is every bit as important as winning the kinetic one. In all of this, it forces us to step back and ask a really fundamental question for our time. In an age of cheap drones and hypersonic missiles, if a perfect shield is impossible, then what does real safety, real security actually look like? The answer, it seems, isn't just a better piece of technology. It's a completely new way of thinking about defense itself.